Now. Pastor Jared here with today's reading from the New Testament. Today we are looking at Revelation chapter 6. Now, again, I encourage you guys to check out the Bible Project's introduction to the book of Revelation because it really talks a lot about how Revelation uses a lot of metaphorical language that I think in our time period, sometimes people look at Revelation and think everything needs to be viewed literally, everything needs to be viewed allegorically, and say, well, this image matches up with this image matches up with this image, because that's kind of how we operate in the modern world. But in the ancient world, that's not exactly how everything worked. And so yesterday I talked about how even the seals and the bowls and the trumpets, how they really were kind of a spiraling of maybe the same thing talked about in three different ways. And so I want to encourage you guys to look at that. My phone is ringing, so I need to silence that. So um, anyway, today we're looking at Revelation 6. The seven seals is the thing at the beginning, the little thing that's not in the actual text, but I read it anywhere, I guess. So verse 1, I looked on when the Lamb opened up one of the seven seals, and I heard one of the four living creatures saying with a thunderous voice, "Come." So I looked, and here came a white horse. The one who rode it had a bow, and he was given a crown, and as a conqueror he rode out to conquer. Then when the Lamb opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature say, "Come." And another horse, fiery red, came out, and the one who rode it was granted permission to take peace from the earth so that people would butcher one another, and he was given a huge sword. Then when the Lamb opened up the third seal, I heard the living creature say, "Come." The third living creature say, "Come." So I looked, and here came a black horse, and the one who rode it had a balanced scale in his hand. Then I heard something like the sound, a voice from among the four living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat will cost a day's pay, and 3 quarts of barley will cost a day's pay. But do not damage the olive oil and the wine." Then, when the Lamb opened up the fourth seal, I heard a voice of the fourth living creature saying, "Come." So I looked, and here came a pale green horse, and the name of the one who rode it was Death, and Hades followed right behind. They were given authority over a fourth of the earth to kill its population with the sword, famine, and disease, and by the wild animals of the earth. Now, when the Lamb opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been violently killed because of the word of God and because of the testimony they had been given. They cried out with a loud voice, "How long, sovereign master, holy and true, before you judge those who live on the earth and avenge our blood?" Each of them was given a long white robe, and they were told to rest for a little longer until the full number was reached of both their fellow servants and their brothers who were going to be killed, just as they had been. Then I looked when the Lamb opened the sixth seal. A huge earthquake took place. The sun became as black as sackcloth made of hair, and the full moon became blood red, and the stars in the sky fell to the earth like fig tree dropping its unripe figs when shaken by a fierce wind. The sky was split apart like a scroll being rolled up. Every mountain and island was moved from its place. Then the kings of the earth, the very important people, the generals, the rich, the powerful, everyone, slave and free, hid themselves in caves and among the rocks of the mountains. They said to the mountains and to the rocks, "Fall on us and hide us from the face of the one who is seated on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, because of the great day of their wrath has come, and who is able to withstand it?" Like I said, there's a lot of imagery here that the first century would have understood. And I think sometimes we look at it with modern eyes and don't always think about what was originally being communicated. You know, a lot of people, and I've read several commentaries about how, well, the first, when the Lamb opens the first seal, you have this white horse, this white rider with a bow, and who's a conqueror, and say, well, that's Jesus. Well, that's not how someone in the Roman Empire who was under that rule would have understood that image per se, because of some of the context. That first conqueror horse, with the rider that was an archer in the first century, there was a threat to the empire that the empire hadn't defeated. They were the only people at that time who had archers that were mounted. That also their archers, their mounted archers, were known to ride white horses. They're the Parthians. And so this idea of this white horse is this idea of this is a threat to stability. This is a threat to empire, and that's what's going on here. The Parthians were the one people that the Romans, or one of the few people the Romans couldn't subjugate, couldn't defeat. They were, defeated. The Romans were defeated by the Parthians. And so that's part of what's going on here. So you have these four horsemen, and really what we see is it's using these horsemen as these images of the falling apart of the stability of the world around them, and the falling apart of everything the people knew, because all that was built on things that were in the end a lie. Pax Romana, peace. That there's irony of someone is coming to take away peace, because the peace of Rome was not a peaceful thing. Peace of Rome was only peace for the Romans after they'd slaughtered everyone and subjugated everyone who had anything against them. And so when we see this, the white horse comes to conquer. Well, that's threatening, an invasion. The red horse comes and causes upheaval. The black horse comes and there is resources are scarce, and then the death comes with famine and war and disease and wild animals, and so all of that we see just the world that people had trusted in is starting to fall apart. The things that they held to be dear and held to be a stable thing is shown not to be, because they were putting their faith in the empire. And so that's part of what's going on here. And it points to the idea that we as followers of Jesus need to be making sure that we put our faith in Jesus. We put our faith in things that will last, because the Roman Empire, thought it would last forever. It didn't. It fell apart. We may put our trust in things that seem stable, but really we don't know. I know, I guess it was 15 years ago now, almost. Not quite, but Sherry and I, we bought a house. House market, that was at that time, it was a good thing, right? It was a guaranteed thing. It was stable. Buy real estate because real estate always goes up. We bought a house, and then several months later, the bottom dropped out of the market, and all of a sudden, that thing that was stable, the thing that we that our culture look could trust on, was no longer there. And it was hard for a lot of people. Sharon and I felt that as well. But the thing is, we knew we would be okay because our trust wasn't truly in that. Our trust was in Jesus. And we knew that God was going to walk through us. It may have been hard, it may have been difficult, but we knew we were not alone. And I think that's part of the thing to understand about this entire book of Revelation is it's a it's a message to the church to remind them that when everything is falling apart, when everything isn't looking good, when it feels like, there's nothing left, when you feel like, this was written to a church that was being persecuted and being killed for their faith. This, this letter, it was meant to remind them you're not alone. Even here in the end of this chapter, you have these people who had been martyred by the Roman Empire because they refused to worship the empire, worship the emperor, and be good citizens in that way. They said, no, we only worship Jesus. Those who had died, that they cry out, how long? And it's important to remember that Jesus is in control. God has sovereignty. And what we're seeing in this chapter is the sovereignty of the empire begins to be stripped away because it really didn't have sovereignty to begin with. And Jesus does. And so we can trust him even when it's difficult, even when we feel like we're losing things. We know that in the end, he is sovereign. And we may not understand everything we're going through. We may not understand everything around us, but we know we can trust him even when it's difficult, even when it looks like everything is falling apart, because he's God. Hope you guys are doing well. Have a wonderful day.